Extension of reporting requirement regarding enhancement of information sharing and coordination of military training between Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense. Sector 1064. Continuation of certain Department of Defense reporting requirements. Sector 1065. Updated review and enhancement of existing authorities for using Air Force and Air National Guard modular airborne firefighting systems and other Department of Defense assets to fight wildfires. Sector 1066. Geographic Combatant Command Risk Assessment of Air Force Airborne Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Modernization Plan. Sector 1067. Biennial Assessments of Air Force Test Center. Sector 1068. Report on 2019 World Military Games. Sector 1069. Reports on oversight of Afghanistan. Sector 1070. Study and report on Department of Defense Excess Personal Property Program. Sector 1071. Optimization of Irregular Warfare Technical Support Directorate. Sector 1072. Assessment of requirements for and management of Army 3-dimensional geospatial data. Sector 1073. Required review of Department of Defense Unmanned Aircraft Systems Categorization. Sector 1074. Annual Report and Briefing on Global Force Management Allocation Plan. Sector 1075. Report on World War I and Korean War-era Superfund facilities. Sector 1076. Report on implementation of Irregular Warfare Strategy. Sector 1077. Study on providing end-to-end electronic voting services for absent uniformed services voters in locations with limited or immature postal service. Sector 1078. Report on Air Force strategy for acquisition of combat rescue aircraft and equipment. Subtitle G Other Matters. Sector 1081. Technical, conforming, and clerical amendments. Sector 1082. Modification to regional centers for security studies. Sector 1083. Improvement of transparency and congressional oversight of Civil Reserve Air Fleet. Sector 1084. Observance of National Atomic Veterans Day. Sector 1085. Update of Joint Publication 3-68, Non-Combatant Evacuation Operations. Sector 1086. National Museum of the Surface Navy. Sector 1087. Authorization for memorial for members of the armed forces killed in attack on Hamid Karzai International Airport. Sector 1088. Treatment of operational data from Afghanistan. Sector 1089. Responsibilities for national mobilization, personnel requirements. Sector 1090. Independent assessment with respect to Arctic region. Sector 1091. National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology. Sector 1092. Quarterly Security Briefings on Afghanistan. Sector 1093. Transition of funding for non-conventional assisted recovery capabilities. Sector 1094. Afghanistan War Commission Act of 2021. Sector 1095. Commission on the National Defense Strategy. Title 11 Civilian Personnel Matters Sector 1101. Amendment to Diversity and Inclusion Reporting. Sector 1102. Civilian Personnel Management. Sector 1103. Modification of temporary authority to appoint retired members of the armed forces to positions in the Department of Defense. Sector 1104. Authority to employ civilian faculty members at the Defense Institute of International Legal Studies. Sector 1105. Consideration of employee performance in reductions in force for civilian positions in the Department of Defense. Sector 1106. Repeal of 2-year probationary period. Sector 1107. Modification of DARPA Personnel Management Authority to attract science and engineering experts. Sector 1108. Expansion of rate of overtime pay authority for Department of the Navy employees performing work overseas on naval vessels. Sector 1109. Repeal of crediting amounts received against pay of federal employee or DC employee serving as a member of the National Guard of the District of Columbia. Sector 1110. Treatment of hours worked under a qualified trade of time arrangement. Sector 1111. Parental bereavement leave. Sector 1112. 1-year extension of authority to waive annual limitation on premium pay and aggregate limitation on pay for federal civilian employees working overseas. Sector 1113. Extension of authority for temporary personnel flexibilities for domestic defense industrial base facilities and major range and test facilities base civilian personnel. Sector 1114. 1-year extension of temporary authority to grant allowances, benefits, and gratuities to civilian personnel on official duty in a combat zone. Sector 1115. Assessment of Accelerated Promotion Program suspension. Sector 1116. Increase in allowance based on duty at remote work sites. Sector 1117. Enhancement of recusal for conflicts of personal interest requirements for Department of Defense officers and employees. Sector 1118. Occupational series for digital career fields. Title 12 Matters relating to foreign nations. Subtitle A Assistance and Training. Sector 1201. Administrative support and payment of certain expenses for covered foreign defense personnel. Sector 1202. Authority for certain reimbursable interchange of supplies and services. Sector 1203. Extension of support of special operations for irregular warfare. Sector 1204. Modification and extension of Biennial Controller General of the United States audits of programs to build the capacity of foreign security forces. Sector 1205. Temporary authority to pay for travel and subsistence expenses of foreign national security forces participating in the training program of the United States Colombia Action Plan for Regional Security. Sector 1206. Security cooperation strategy for certain combatant commands. Sector 1207. Report on security cooperation programs. Subtitle B. Matters relating to Afghanistan and Pakistan. Sector 1211. Sense of Congress on the service of United States Armed Forces service members in Afghanistan. Sector 1212. Extension and modification of authority for reimbursement of certain coalition nations for support provided to United States military operations. Sector 1213. Prohibition on transfer of Department of Defense funds or resources to the Taliban. Sector 1214. Prohibition on transporting currency to the Taliban or the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Sector 1215. Prohibition on removal of publicly available accountings of military assistance provided to the Afghan security forces. Sector 1216. Joint Report on using the Synchronized Pre-Deployment and Operational Tracker (SPOT) database to verify Afghan SIV applicant information. Sector 1217. Report and briefing on United States equipment, property, and classified material that was destroyed or abandoned in the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Subtitle C. Matters relating to Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Sector 1221. Extension and modification of authority to provide assistance to vetted Syrian groups and individuals. Sector 1222. Defense and diplomatic strategy for Syria. Sector 1223. Extension and modification of authority to provide assistance to counter the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Sector 1224. Extension and modification of authority to support operations and activities of the Office of Security Cooperation in Iraq. Sector 1225. Prohibition on transfers to bad organization. Sector 1226. Prohibition on transfers to Iran. Sector 1227. Report on the military capabilities of Iran and related activities. Sector 1000